Well, today I'm here with my sweet son, Ben, who's going to share all about his experiences growing up eating traditional foods and being homeschooled.
Hi, sweet friends.
I'm Mary, and this is my sweet son, Ben, and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, recently I shared a video that was titled, What Charlotte Mason Taught Me About Traditional Foods and Homeschooling. And many of you had been asking me to do a video like that, and I'll be sure to link to it in the iCards and below. And the reason is because in one of my, or two maybe of my other videos where I'm teaching, traditional foods cooking, I mentioned that I was a homeschool mom. Well, I got so many comments as to, whoa, how did you homeschool, and what curriculum did you use, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to make that video with you, for you, so that you would know exactly what we did. Well, in that video, I promised you that I would bring my son here, now that he's home for the Christmas vacation holidays, and have him share with you what he thought of growing up eating traditional foods and what he thought of being homeschooled. For those of you who saw my garden video over the summer, you already had a chance to meet my son Ben when he was home with us back then. However, if you're new to my channel or you haven't seen that video, I want to introduce you to Ben.
Hi, sweet friends. I know you guys love Mary's Nest, so it's good to be here. I love you, Mom. It's going to be a good time.
I love you too, sweetheart. So in any event, I wanted to have Ben come and talk to you a little bit about what he thought of growing up eating traditional foods, like, as I say in the beginning, bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. And then to also share with you what he thought about being homeschooled. And in that video where I talked about, where I was just by myself talking about homeschooling and how we came to homeschooling and all of that, I share in that video, if you've not had a chance to see it, that we homeschooled from first grade through 8th grade. And then Benjamin made the transition to what we call, brick and mortar high school. And he'll share also what he thought about that transition. Also, in terms of curriculum, the style of homeschooling that we followed, which again, I talk about in that previous video, was the Charlotte Mason method. And many of you left me comments that you use that method as well. And we really liked that because we used a lot of what we called living books. And those are very rich books, classic books, good literature that I would read aloud to Benjamin. And we'll talk a little bit about why we did a lot of reading aloud, but it was a wonderful, very rich way to homeschool. There's a lot of emphasis on nature, the natural world, and reading just wonderful books that often are a very good way to learn not only good English skills, grammar skills, history, geography, life skills. Really, there's a lot to it. But in any event, I'm going to let Benjamin take this away. And first, I'd like you to share with the folks, maybe remembering back to when, I don't know how far you can remember back, but I know you had been drinking bone broth for a very long time.
Oh my gosh, I remember, we have a yellow bowl with a straw connected to it. And I would be drinking bone broth every morning, even in pre-K, and with sea salt, fleur de sel, the flower of the sea. And, it was delicious. And, I will say this, is that I was always very healthy, never had ear infections, never had any of those things. And I was one of the only kids who really was eating a very traditional foods diet.
And to this day, you have no cavities.
I've never had a cavity. Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I really have been blessed with excellent sort of just vitality.
Yeah.
Oh yes. And I think a lot of that is due to traditional foods and the way you taught me to eat and what I ate when I was young.
And what was your experience? I know we have some funny stories, but what did you think about when I brought home raw milk?
Well, the butter plug was terrifying.
Tell them what.
Okay, so she opens the milk and there's another seal. But this one's white and gooey. It's like the kefir. Oh, the champagne of milk. I don't drink, mother. But no, it was something. But I think it's only because we're not used to those kind of things.
Yeah.
But I loved it. Tasted a lot better than regular milk, and I think it was really good for the development of my bones. Did a lot of Taekwondo and really was able to come out unscathed. Had very strong bones.
Yeah. That was funny. Yeah, I remember.
Oh, it was horrifying.
And the very first time, I think I may have shared this
Chicken
with all
feet.
of you.
Oh my god, the alien that was stuffed in the fridge. Yeah.
That's what those chicken feet too looked like an alien.
Some of the things are scared. The mother, the vinegar mother, the kombucha monster, and it's
funny things for a kid.
Yeah, but it comes out good in the end.
Yeah, I think I'm just telling the folks that the first gallon of raw milk I brought home, I was a little worried about it. I had raw milk from the farm growing up. There was a farm near us where I grew up, and my mother would get the raw milk. And I think I never mentioned to you that it was raw. The man we had the metal box outside, and he would put it in the metal box outside our door. But when this is my child, and, I don't want to give him anything that could not be good for him. And so I got a gallon of milk from the farm, and the farm is beautiful, and it's clean, and all the farmer looks great, his wife looks great, all the kids look healthy. So I was like, okay, I think this is a good farm to get milk from. But in any event, I take out that butter plug. Oh my gosh. It's just the cream that forms, because it's not homogenized. So the cream is on top. And at the very, very top, the neck of the milk bottle, it can get a little thick. And we would call it the butter plug. Because sometimes, remember, it'd be yellow.
It's so rich. And the milk would sometimes be yellow.
So I pulled that out, and I drank the whole gallon of milk myself. And when I woke up the next day, I said, well, I'm still alive. So it must be okay to give to him. But now, what did you think of ferments? Like the first time you had sauerkraut? Do you remember?
Well, I do remember Bubba's.
Bubby, right. We would buy Bubbies.
Yeah, these pickles and like a thing.
Yeah.
And then I know that you made a lot of sauerkraut, and I always really liked it. And you would always tell me, oh, Benjamin, it's very good for you. The food of the ancients. Get your Rhine corn. You'd be strong like Iron Railroad. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. That's a way to get a young man, a little, a 9-year-old boy, get him real excited about things and make you a real strong man.
Yeah.
Don't cut all the fat off the meat, because, Benjamin, when you're on a date later, the girl will think you're very odd. They're just, dig in.
That's funny.
And the shots of cod liver oil with the chaser of grapefruit juice. Good times.
These are funny things that we used to do. That makes me laugh.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the einkorn, and that was really new to all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Because I knew spelt, and I knew emmer, which, of course, my mother called farro, and that we ate kind of as a side grain. But einkorn was something new, to grind that and make bread.
A lot of the neat things that you would find.
You really like sourdough.
I love sourdough. It is my favorite kind of bread. It is delicious. And what's good is that, you don't suffer the same consequences as eating like white bread.
And you didn't think, because I hear from a lot of people that their children sometimes find it very sour.
I love sour things.
But you had the sour tangy gene like me.
And I think, it's so important what people ate when they were very young. And I always, sourdough, butter and salt, that's my comfort food, always will be. That's the go-to food. And, it really, the gut flora and all that, they like it. My body is prepped for that. That sort of healthy foods were, always really a part of my life.
Yes.
And so I really have grown to like them. Even today, I find that ensuring that I maintain that healthy diet, I feel better. I like the food more. Eating vegetables all throughout my youth.
You were always, that's one thing. I never had any trouble with you. You liked vegetables.
Oh, yeah, Dad would just say, you're the big troll. You eat the broccoli. But yeah, I love vegetables. You would always make, what are they called? Brussels sprouts with
Brussels
butter?
sprouts, yeah.
I never got where people didn't like them. But then you have Brussels sprouts that aren't yours, and then you're like, okay, I understand why people don't like them.
They have no butter.
They have no butter on them.
That was Dad, too. My husband often said, gee, I never thought that I liked this particular vegetable or not, but boy, is it good with butter on it.
Oh, the peas you make? Really? Hey,
I'm glad you enjoyed
vegetables
that.
can be good or bad, you know?
Yeah.
You get mashed peas that are a week old out of a can, and that's not a good time. But you have some nice peas made up in the nest, and they're pretty good.
Oh, that's funny. And now, what did you think of cultured dairy, like making? Because I know the kefir really never resonated with you.
Yeah, it just, you can lead a horse to water, but sometimes you can't make them drink. Yeah, it was just always like a very sour milk.
Yeah.
And I just never really, I could take it, okay. If it's really good for me, I can take a little bit of it, but I never really enjoyed kefir. But the Irish butter, things sort of, cottage cheese.
Oh, you like cottage cheese.
I love cottage cheese.
Yeah.
And people think it's very odd.
Yeah, but you like cottage cheese.
Yeah, you just put a ton of cracked pepper on there, and it's a good time.
That is very good. Did you like, how about yogurt?
It's okay. I can't say I'm a crazy yogurt guy, but I don't have any vendetta against it.
Now, did you like the plain homemade yogurt? Did you find it?
You would always get plain. We'd mix a little honey in. That was very good.
So it's better, like would you say for kids, to mix in a little honey, or sometimes I'd put in some preserves and things like that?
Oh, yeah, that's much better. Sometimes chunks of fruit can be a little of a surprise for kids,
But mixing in the jam,
delicious,
or some honey and things
really
like that, I think that makes a big difference, especially with homemade yogurt. And depending how tangy or not so tangy it is, and whether your kids have the tangy gene, as we called it, or not. Now, what did you think of? I served you a lot of.
I just have to tell you one thing, Mother.
What?
The locale honey.
Oh, yeah.
So as you guys know, I have dyslexia. And
Yeah,
I
if you saw
in
the
the
previous
pantry
video.
low-cal honey. So, Mother, why is this honey low-calorie and the others aren't? She says, oh, Benjamin, it's local. So honey just always makes that. And to this day, you always get me that honey at my apartment and stuff. So, yeah, it's nice, but a good memory.
But that is such a sweet memory. And do you remember the bottle also came in a little squeeze bear? Remember? You had the squeeze bear, and then it was the same company, and then it was it looked like a little beehive.
Oh, yeah, I remember, too, the cinnamon and the bear.
Yeah, and the cinnamon and the bear.
Yeah, for the oatmeal and...
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. You reminded me. I wanted to ask you about the oatmeal. What did you think of the oat groats that were then, like, we'd chop them, we'd roast them in the oven, and then we'd chop them up, and then we'd make oatmeal out of them? What were your thoughts on that?
I have to say that really it's just as good as store-bought oatmeal, doing it that way, and I guarantee you it's healthier for you. But I have to say I've never been a big oatmeal guy, but it really isn't bad. You get a little brown sugar on there, a little cinnamon, and it really can be something that's good to start your day with.
But so I think that...
Better than eating cereal, it's much healthier for you.
Oh, yeah. You got an earful as a kid about it's extruded, it's not healthy.
Oh, yeah, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils.
Yeah,
high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, that's
the great devils. No, but you were great.
But
I would go telling all the kids... enjoy your pus milk.
Oh, yeah,
or,
the pasteurized.
Or, what's the other one? Are you enjoying your rancid oils? I was a little bit of a troublemaker sometimes, and my mother's a saint, so God bless her.
You're so cute. Now, so that was interesting, because I remember you never eating. Dad and I would more enjoy the oatmeal, but that really wasn't a huge thing for you. Just like the yogurt and the kefir weren't you, but you loved bone broth.
Oh,
you loved ferments. You loved sourdough.
Turmeric milk you'd make.
Oh, yes.
Whenever I couldn't see it, I loved it. And then when the lights came on and you see that it's yellow, traumatizing.
When you had a bad cold and you were in bed.
Oh, Mom, this is so good. And then I see it. Oh my God, it looks like vomit.
Yeah, it's a little weird. In the video where I make, I recently just made a video on turmeric tea, but a while back I had made one on turmeric golden milk, and I tell that story.
Golden milk.
About where when you had it in the bedroom and the
lights were off
and I was sick. And you were sick and you were just drinking
so
it.
Good.
And then when you came in the kitchen, you said, "Oh, Mom, can I have some of that golden milk that you've been making me?" But you didn't connect the term golden with the color, just something
there's
delicious.
There's gold and there's yellow.
And then you were sitting here at the kitchen table and I served you the milk and you were like, "Oh my God, it's yellow."
I thought something went terribly
and you
wrong.
you were maybe like, it was that one summer
My memory's
camp
foggy, but I remember it. Oh yeah.
You got real sick one time. And that was it was so out of character for you.
Oh, it's
you
rare.
so rarely got sick. And you were on a
you
were on a little skiff out on the lake.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the year that the lake was real low and they were telling people, don't spend too much time.
And you know me, I'd just be in there glugging down lake water and, throwing myself into the mud, and then I end up getting sick.
And then I felt so bad because it was a few days had passed. And you were going to go to do you remember you were going to go to a cooking school camp?
Yeah.
And he was going to go to a cooking school camp, and he felt so bad, and it was terrible. And it was the other camp was ending, and then they called me, and they said, "He's got a temperature." And so I came and picked you up, and then you were sick for a whole week.
Remember that? I remember that.
And then the doctor said, just thinks you took in too much lake water, and that a lot of kids were getting sick.
But hey, I got a great cooking school lesson from the master over here.
Oh, you're very kind. But that's funny that the oatmeal. But I think you liked granola.
Oh yeah,
Did you like
granola, very
granola?
good. I've never been one to mix milk with a granola.
No, that you didn't. You'd have the glass of milk and the bowl.
And it's funny, I've encountered some people that like that, but a lot, of people mix them. I love talking. I wonder where I get that from. So sometimes I'll be talking, and if I mix the milk in, then things would get soggy. So, that's probably why. But granola's good. And you made some granola. Yeah, it's good.
That's funny. Well, we had a lot of adventures with traditional food.
Oh, a lot of crazy times and really some fun things. Heirloom tomatoes. And
the patty pan squash, remember when we grew it? And the cornichons.
Yes.
The little pickles.
Oh, and just really cool things that, a lot of people I think today don't get to experience, like breakfast radishes or things like that. Us going to these different ranches and the sketchy raw milk people. And, they're great, but it's so silly, rules around it.
Yeah.
And it's something real special that I think a lot of people, the bonding experience of it is real nice.
Yeah.
We have went through the ring together, getting the chicken eggs, watching chickens for a friend, and then it gets beheaded, and we find it dead, and it's, a whole folderol.
Yeah, that's raising chickens is an adventure. And you have to really be prepared for that. And we had friends who raised chickens. And we will tell you this story. And they had bunnies too. And while they were gone, they were gone for the summer
Friends,
or something.
not food.
And we would feed the chickens. And Ben, you always took care of the rabbits. And you'd feed the chickens too. But one day and then we would go in the morning and in the evening, and one day we went to check on them, and I saw one chicken
he stuck his head out of the thing
in the corner or something, and I was like, come on. And then I saw what had happened, and I called my husband, and I said, and the funny thing about it was, before the people left, we said, "Are you sure? We've never had chickens."
And they don't stress at all. They're like, "That's normal."
They're like,
and then we come to say, "Oh yeah, that happens."
And I called the people, and they were like, "Oh, don't worry about it." And actually, they were coming home that night, I think.
Good eats.
Yeah. And it was funny because I said to my husband, "Oh no, I don't know." When I don't know what happened, and we felt so terrible. But the people said, "Oh no, that happens. we have coyotes and raccoons," and I forget exactly what the animals they were talking about, but they were I think they might have been even on their way home. I might have talked to my girlfriend on the cell phone, But they were so calm about it. And she was like, oh, my husband knows how to butcher chickens. It's no big deal. I think I shared with all of you, I'm originally from New York. I lived and worked in New York City. And so watching this, and this is so many years ago, now, I have a lot more experience and a lot calmer about these things. Maybe even younger. I can't remember. But back then, I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on?
Because you think of it like a pet almost, but they,
and they don't think of them like
it's a farm animal.
Yeah, it's a farm animal. But
like that Hey Pig, the documentary, and the guy's like, Hey Pig, oh, he's gonna make good bacon, But that's how it is.
But in any event, we had some funny adventures. But I know that the people are very anxious to hear about your homeschooling experience. And in that previous video, I talk a little bit about that you had, in not pre-K, that was very uneventful because it was just 3 hours, it was playing and learning some basic skills. And then in kindergarten, it was like the first or second week. And, as I said, I shared this in the previous video where the teacher...
He's so brilliant, but he's illiterate. No, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're fine. But they called me and they said, he's very smart and he speaks very well and he has this very good vocabulary, but he's really struggling to learn how to read. And they said, we think he has dyslexia. And then I don't know if you really remember very much, because that would have been kindergarten.
I actually, I surprisingly remember a lot, just because, I think it was a stressful time back then, because you don't, you hear it, and you've never heard of it before, and it sounds like some disease. Of course, just neural diversity, it's just a difference in the way the brain works.
Yeah.
But... back then it was a little scary, I think.
And school was, even kindergarten, it wasn't pleasant.
It was tough. They bring the letter blocks. I want nothing to do with that. I just want to foment insurrection, not nap. No napping.
He wasn't a napper, neither was I. That was really funny.
There was work to be done.
Yeah, and I just remember the teacher always saying, all he ever wants to do, and he really likes science, and all he ever wants to do is go to the science table.
And he just wants to learn. He needs to sleep.
But it was a difficult time for you. And,
you guys were very kind, but it was tough for me.
And so... you were getting some reading therapy in kindergarten, not through the school, but through the private reading therapy. And she was a lovely young woman.
Very nice. I forget her name, but very nice.
And after, like in the spring of kindergarten, and you were just so unhappy, and you told me, Benjamin told me, I really don't like it. I'm very unhappy. And...
I don't remember this part.
You came into the minivan. I was in the carpool line, and you got in, and you said, basically, I never want to go back there. It was really heartbreaking, And he had been such a learner. He just had such a love of learning, and now he's this unhappy child who doesn't want to go to school. Who I think you said you hated it. I mean. I
think it was just the separation too of during the time when everyone was together, I had to go
off to reading therapy. That was hard.
Yeah, that was tough on me.
So she said, the reading therapist said, I know other parents who are experiencing this, and if you want, I can continue the reading therapy, and then you homeschool Ben for the other subjects. This was something I had never entertained. I didn't know anything about homeschooling, and this is a long time ago. My son is in his mid-20s, and so this is a long time ago. There weren't a lot of people homeschooling. And so I said, well, let me look into it. And I talked to the little local, he went to a small little Catholic school, and I talked to our local little public school also too. We live in a small town, and back then it was really small. There was one little public school, and it was real small. Elementary school, and I spoke to a lovely woman there, and she said, gee, we really don't start any reading therapy until 4th grade. And I said, well, at least it's something. And then I got a flyer in the mail. I won't go into a lot of detail about this because I do cover it in the other video, but I got a flyer in the mail about a seminar for people who had dyslexia or their children had dyslexia. And I went to it, and the lady who spoke, along with her husband, both medical doctors from Yale who had done a lot of study on the brain, and she said, and as I say in that other video, the auditorium was packed. I mean, I could barely get a seat.
One in every 5 people have it.
I was
the
shocked.
severity just varies.
And so she said in her talk, the minute you find out that your child has dyslexia, you have to start intervention right away. Because the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be for them to eventually learn how to read. Because you want them making those neural nets when they're little. So that changed everything. So I said to the reading therapist, okay, you do the reading therapy, and then I'll homeschool Ben. You know, first grade, how hard can it be? And it was an adventure. I don't know if you remember, I dressed you all cute in little pants and a little dress shirt. You know, I wanted him to feel that, okay, it's still going to be school.
Yes, that's important.
Do you remember you stood in front, you probably don't remember because you were maybe 7. You stood in front of the aquarium, and we had the big fish aquarium that you had.
I remember that.
And I took a picture of you. And well, I didn't know what the right answer was. And I thought, well, we better get textbooks and workbooks, and we better sit down at the table and get this job done. That lasted 5 minutes.
Sometimes I can be a little obstinate.
And it's not just you. I mean, I think it's hard for boys,
a lot of people.
For boys.
Yeah,
you know?
And too, you know, to this day, you know, I 5th, 6th grade reading level, but I can get by. And with voice to text and text to speech, but none of that existed back then.
None of that.
And none of it, and maybe a little bit here and there, but like dragon actually speaking, it's terrible.
Yeah, for kids. It just did a kid's voice. But it was interesting because I kind of remember there was really nothing out here, and I formed
formed everything
on Yahoo.
She's such a doer. Like no, if my mother wants something, she will achieve it. Like every group, every single co-op, all bringing the teacher to the house, and
But it was funny because I really, back then, I didn't know what to do, you know. And as I've shared with you, I had Benjamin in my 40s. So I had worked before that. So I tended to approach things like you were working, you know, in business. And so they didn't have Facebook or any of that back then. But they had Yahoo. And I made a little group on Yahoo and just put it out there and was like, hello, we're here. We live in this town and we're homeschooling. Come join us. And little by little, people started contacting me. And next thing I knew, we had this lovely little group of ladies. And I really, for the first couple of weeks, homeschooling kind of fell to the wayside because I really didn't know what to do. The workbook, textbook, that wasn't working. And we met, I don't know if you remember, we would go to the play groups, and there were other mothers there, and they had young children, but they were all very experienced homeschoolers. They had big families, and many of their children were already in middle school. But what was interesting was they all tended to follow a certain way for home education. And that was following this woman called Charlotte Mason. And she had lived in the 1800s, early 1900s. And she really inspired me because she talked about educating the whole person, not, dry textbooks or workbooks. Now, nothing, if you have children who love that and work well with it, that's fantastic. But that really wasn't our case. And I think when I started reading books to you, and I had read books to you before you went to school, but when we did it as a homeschool thing where we did historical literature, and then we would do a lot of nature studies for science and so on and so forth.
As a kid, I really loved science.
Yeah, and how did you feel that went?
Oh, you were a saint to do that, to read to me and things like that. And this is back in the back when times when, I had a little Victor reader, which I got later. But it was this old device from Reading for the Blind and Dyslexic. Very good for the time, but it was tough back then. There really was not, the technological leaps and bounds that we've made.
It's amazing.
Someone who has dyslexia can function so easily today. Even someone, I'm in the 1%.
Yes, Benjamin
has.
Severe. That's something I didn't share. I didn't know if you would want to share that.
Please.
Benjamin has very severe dyslexia. He's in the 1 to 2 percentile range of people who have dyslexia. So learning how to read was really, he had 9 years of reading
It was
therapy.
incredibly hard and incredibly difficult. And, people talk about, oh, do the letters move around and stuff? Oh, not really. I could see every letter. I could tell you what it is. I just couldn't tell you the word. It
Just
just
put them together. Yeah.
it was felt so natural to me. I couldn't imagine reading normally, and that was tough. And I would say up to probably freshman year in college, I still was maybe around a third grade reading level, and that was I tried and tried and tried, and that was the best I could get to. And only in the past couple years have I kind of gotten up to that sixth grade. I can get by. If I need to read something, I can do that. Like you would always say, what was it? Enough to read street signs and
To get around town.
Get around town. There we go.
Now, did you find that, so in the early grades, I was always reading everything to you, and we would really read the gamut. Somebody just asked me a question about what types of books specifically that we we
Classics,
for boys.
mythology.
Yeah. Oh, you like mythology? That's right.
Percy Jackson, because of having dyslexia, and
The character Percy Jackson.
There were some other real good books I forget the names of, but I like the Wolf Brothers series of Torak and some ancient man
and
thing.
And that's like really when you were getting into middle school.
That's
age.
true. And I had the Victor Reader.
Yeah, you had the Victor Reader, and then we would get.
You were so sweet. I loved you reading. I would say next chapter.
And that was a question that I had gotten from some of you homeschool moms, and you were like, "Oh, read alouds is great, but what about is it bad when the child, because you're using the Charlotte Mason method, is it bad when the child gets older and then just wants to read on their own?" And no, not at all. That's fantastic. And then
if they want to do audiobooks, they can have an app, or if you don't want them to be using a phone, get a Victor Reader.
That's what I was going to say. For dyslexia, when you got older and you were in middle school, and a lot of times I would read some of the chapters during the day, but he loved it so much. But one time I do remember, didn't we stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning
it was like
finishing
the last
Percy
book in
Jackson?
a series. Yeah. You're a saint.
But because we were going to go to the book signing.
Oh,
at
yes,
Book
that's
People
right.
in Austin.
Yes. That was a good time.
That was funny. And so he had to make sure that we finished the book because he didn't want the kids to talk about it.
It'd be all spoilers.
Be all spoilers. But when you got older, it was great, the Victor Reader, and then also, even if you have children who, and this is something I had shared with parents who really love this idea. They said even though their children don't have dyslexia and could read just fine, that sometimes maybe their child wanted to do something like draw, maybe they're very good at art, or they wanted to knit, or whatever the case may be.
Audiobooks are so
great.
But
audiobooks.
So great.
It's amazing. And this is one thing that I thought was very interesting was that even we live in a little town, we don't have a public library, we have a little community library. And they are so nice and willing, and they actually, when you're excited at the library,
they'll send out to
so
get
happy.
things to you, and you're allowed to download them.
Yeah, and the interlibrary loans that they'll do interlibrary loans for you.
You can get anything you want,
and you can pretty much get anything you want, any book that is in an audiobook format.
And there's so many free too online.
Oh, there's so many free.
All the other services.
And YouTube has people reading books, So today it's a lot different than
you can find like entire book series on YouTube.
So there, especially with the classics. So there's a lot that that really helped us. But so we had basically first through third grade, we were very much with read alouds, and you would do some practice. I've shared with them that you had dyscalculia for the math and dysgraphia for the writing, but you would do your best with copy work.
Have the little page, and then, oh my God, every morning, 8 a.m. we'd be driving down to the reading tutor. And then,
every day,
the
5 days a week.
Wonderful woman ended up being our neighbor. That was the last one I had.
That was the best.
Incredible teacher using that old system.
Yeah, she used an old-fashioned way, and she had the best success.
Yeah, reading like Bible stories and things like that. Yeah,
she was so sweet. And I remember she was so cute because
okay?
Yeah, she had a son who was in his 40s, and he had dyslexia.
Pilot.
And he went on to become a pilot, and she was probably in her late 60s, maybe very early 70s,
yeah.
when she took Benjamin. She lived a few blocks over from us. And she just really liked Benjamin.
We'd walk there.
Yeah, we'd walk there. And she said, oh, I'm forget the term that they use, certified academic language therapist or reading therapist, something like that. And she said, my son had dyslexia, very severe. And she said, I specifically became a reading therapist all those years ago because he was struggling in school. And then she went on to work in the school system where she lived at the time and was teaching children to read. And the reading therapist really...
Scottish Rite or something. I forget what program she used.
No, that was a place that we went to, Scottish Rite Learning Center in Austin. But she used all the systems for helping children with dyslexia are based on the Orton-Gillingham method usually. But they have all these variations. And she just went back to using the very basic original Orton-Gillingham.
A is for apple. B is for bat.
Yeah.
C is for cat.
And just doing very, very simple like that.
Because that was tough for me. The letters and the months took me a long time to get. And even the left and right hand, really, that was difficult for me. I was like,
Yeah, it was hard. And so but it was great because she took 5th grade and up. And you were just in 5th grade.
That really helped me to learn to read.
And she said, I told her, he ranks in the first, second percentile as very severely dyslexic. And the other tutors, they did their best, but they said, this is
he's probably never going to read.
And I loved it when she said, oh, no, I don't accept that.
See, that's what's great about us, and I think a lot of your viewers too, is that when someone says there's no chance, no hope, it's like with Obi. When we got Obi, it's our dog. A real sick puppy. We went to one place, they said she will die. And we went to another and they said, okay, we'll try this.
Yeah.
You gotta sometimes just say, it is not fait accompli.
Mm-hmm.
There is no set in stone thing until you set it in stone.
Right. That's very true. But she was wonderful. But it was very cute what you were saying about the Bible story. She was so sweet because she said, she was a very religious lady. And she said, I don't know, what religion you may be or not be. And she said, before I read these stories to children, I always like to ask the parents first if they're comfortable with me using this book. And there were children's stories. And and I said, of course, I think that just made me feel she was so sweet and so kind, She was a delight.
Everything, too, was like very old
She had very old-fashioned things,
that she'd used on her son. And everything, how the old books look. And it was nice.
Yeah, she really did a
good woman.
job.
She painted her wall to use as a chalkboard.
Yeah, she was
just a very kind soul. And I think that's what's important to find. You find a good woman or a good man, a good person
match
who's a good match. And, if I was getting distracted, she'd say, Earth to Benjamin, Earth to Benjamin. And because, it can be very disheartening. Anyone who has any learning difference, whether that's any kind of the ADs, ADHD, or whatever, dyslexia, and even though it's a very different vein, but things like mild autism, Tourette's, things like that, it can be very, very disheartening. I saw all the other kids reading Harry Potter, and I got the Harry Potter book. I couldn't make heads or tails of it, and that stung because you really felt that you were on the outs. But then being able to get it on an audiobook and say, okay, it's okay, I'll just watch the movies movies were better.
And we really have to thank Dad for that. He was terrific, always going to the library and getting everything.
I've become active in the dyslexic community, some years on. And
yes, when did that start? Were you in college at that point?
I would have been very late in high school. And I've kept that going, and it's... it's something people really can easily fall into that fait accompli. Like it's too difficult or it's too hard. It's same with like traditional foods kind of thing. It's same with anything in life. That it's too much. But, you gotta have a can-do attitude. You take a shot of kefir and we're ready to go.
So 1 through 3rd was pretty much you and me. And then we would participate in the homeschool playgroups. And I think we would primarily do school Monday through Thursday, and it was kind of you and me, the read alouds,
and the reading teacher in the morning,
and the reading teacher in the morning,
and then just you and me,
and
then the groups were more for socialization.
Yes, and then right, and he was always very sociable and outgoing, and so I wanted to make sure that he had some kids to chat with and play and all. And every Friday was the homeschool playgroup, and given that this was first grade and when you homeschool, you're able to accomplish a lot more in a shorter period of time, because when the children are in a traditional brick and mortar school, they have to wait online, and there may be 20 or 30 kids in the class, and they
Billy's
have to wait.
Vomiting in the corner. Like,
you remember from kindergarten?
Oh my God,
But it's all, and you don't have all this one-on-one, so you can really get quite a bit of subject matter covered. And we would basically do very simple things. Like we said, we would have the reading therapy in the morning, and that was a blessing that I was always able to schedule that. And reading therapists were very difficult to find back then. We were very lucky. And I'd always take the first slot, because I figured you were an early riser, I was an early riser, we were up, washed, dressed, boom, we got the reading therapy.
You were an early riser.
I'm being generous.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mother.
So we always had fun with the lovely reading therapist
down the street,
who always gave you tea and crumpets. Or sometimes she'd have biscotti, sometimes she'd have a little piece of cake.
Just like a sweet grandmother type.
Yeah, she really was.
Good woman.
But so then we would come home from there, whatever reading therapist we had, and then that would be done, and then we'd get home. And in the very early grades, I'd usually give him a little snack or something. And then we would basically do our read alouds.
Yeah.
And then I'd sometimes maybe just give him one little sentence to do a little copy work. I was just trying to supplement what the reading therapist was doing, because I'm having trouble remembering when you actually started you had occupational therapy for the dysgraphia to help with the handwriting.
At the hospital.
At the hospital. That was scary.
And
but I would give you little
you would give me these little sheets to copy letters, and
then sometimes
sentences.
I'd have you just like trace your hand
and
to get
the cush balls. And things like
just
that
to get his hands exercised.
Yeah, it was tough. Like, to this day, I can ride a bike, but I'm by no means good at it. It's sort of that two sides of the body communication.
Yeah, and that's what they said about the handwriting.
And you always were like, moment Ben could walk, make sure he can swim.
Yeah,
life skill.
That was the one thing.
Life skill. So that came easy.
2 years old, you were learning how to swim. But I remember we would do these little activities that this is before you were actually going for formal occupational therapy, because I didn't realize at the time that he had dysgraphia. That diagnosis came later, when I noticed when I was trying to get him to do the copy work, I might just write the letter A. You eventually work up to like a lovely verse from a poem or something like that. So children are learning good grammar and good vocabulary words and things like that.
You had the Jack and Jill thing.
But you start with the letters. And I would just write an A, and those papers, they're real big like this that they have for little kids.
And you do one after the other. Yeah. It was tough for me.
Yeah, and he could do that, while I was reading to him or whatever the case may be. And not... These things are 5 minutes. That's for little children. This was not a big involved thing. But I noticed that was very difficult for
And
him.
I was not the type that she could leave to do work. I'd disappear, and I'd be in the dirt somewhere digging away.
But so I think that was what I think we tried a little copy work. But for the most part, I was reading aloud to you.
You were teaching me life skills
and
too,
teaching you
and
life
sort
skills.
of how to tie one's shoes.
Yes, and
that's tough. And it's amazing too that a lot of very basic things like, okay, what's the Constitution? What's our government structure?
When you got a little older,
just the simple,
thing.
the basic things that are not covered today.
But so I think we spent a lot of time reading aloud. You loved being read to, and I would read you different books. That I shared some in that previous video that I showed to the folks, or different stories, about famous people.
And the Book of Manners.
Oh yeah, the Book of Manners. She didn't like that one. He was was very well mannered, but it was funny that there was this book with like little stick figures, and it was called How to Behave.
Oh.
And you just felt that it was very, even as a little kid.
Authoritarian. I must rebel. It is my duty.
Thought it was very
freedom.
Very preachy.
Yeah.
That was fun. Yeah, but that doesn't go over well, I think, with a little boy.
But all the other books are great.
But I think that the books that you really liked was when, like one in the previous video I share was about John Audubon. And how, but it's the person who took pictures of birds and drew birds and all of that. Not took pictures, drew birds, and loved nature and whatnot. And Benjamin really enjoyed stories that
the fighting naturalist.
Yeah, the fighting naturalist. Yeah, that were about things in nature, but from the perspective of the famous person, but when they were a boy. And I think finding books like that is
whether you
really,
have a boy or a girl, finding that on the age. And then we read so many great books in the car wherever we went.
Oh my gosh, we had audiobook. Oh, so
on
many
CDs.
Yeah, we
insert
listened to
disc 2, 3.
Yeah, and so many good books. Like Treasure Island and all these books.
Nick of Time.
Nick of Time.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful. There was a 2-book series. Wonderful. But that was really just, in that 1 through 3rd grade, there was a lot of read alouds, a little copy work practice, a little math. You also had not been diagnosed. We found out that he had dyscalculia, which is the trouble with math. And we didn't find that out until later. And then you started getting remediation for that when I think you were about 4th grade.
Back then, no one really checked for these things.
Yeah, and that was a tough one, too, to find people who helped with that. But we would do little things, like we had the little colored bears. And I'd say, well, if you have 3 and I take away 2, how many do you have?
Yeah, 20. Yeah. I forgot about those. I remember those. Yeah.
So we would do these things, and again, this is like 5 minutes and then maybe 20 minutes of read alouds, and then we would play some games that were very learning based, and we'd spend some time outside in nature.
Always whenever I had free time, I was encouraged to
be outside.
Be outside in nature, get some fresh air and sunshine, Benjamin. It'll be good for your skin.
Yeah. And we would press flowers. Dad got you a flower press, and so we do different things like that. And then on Fridays...
Oh, got a microscope?
Oh, you got a microscope. Yeah, that was wonderful. And then and we read the book about... Gosh, I don't remember...
I know we had the Father Mendel book.
Yeah, we had Father Mendel, and that's a great book about the peas and genetic studies. And then about the smallpox vaccine and all that. And so we read a lot of books. We had a lot of fun.
The people with the cows are immune.
Yeah.
And boom. Yeah, no, really.
So
excellent deduction skills it helps teach.
It really does, And we would go to the library and take out books that looked interesting to us and so on and so forth. And then Friday, we'd have the play group. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of fun. And that was like pretty much all day. And the kids, there would be some structured activities that we mothers would organize, but we'd bring lunch, and it was kind of an all-day affair.
No matter what we were doing, you always had the best food and the best lunch. I went to this Bible camp.
Because of traditional foods.
Yeah, I went to this Bible camp. They're like, get some Lunchables or something. Yeah. And you come in with dates and the food of the back when times. And just everywhere,
church,
anything we went to, you always had the best of everything. It was funny.
Yeah, and then what we would do is we would...
You like cooking and stuff. I don't know if you guys know that, but yeah, you're really into it.
And so we would... we would have that kind of structured, and then I think... being as Benjamin shared, sometimes I ran things like a little bit of a business, and I said, gee, we should have field trips. So then I started reaching out to all. I said to the other mothers, would you like to go on? Oh, the dump is like the most
best.
Amazing field trip ever. We still laugh about that.
Best.
And but I said to the other mothers, would you like to do field trips on Friday? And they were like, that's great. You organize it. So I called all these different places, and I said, we're just a small homeschool group, but, would you do a field trip? Would you be okay? And I was amazed at how gracious so many people were. And they were like, we love homeschool groups. We're happy to have you come visit.
And you show interest?
Oh, and you show it. Yeah, and the kids really are so happy to, to have go on a field trip, because they normally wouldn't have that like they would in a brick and mortar school, in a homeschool environment, unless one of the mothers coordinates it. So, of course, we had a lot of fun with that. And every Friday we would go on these field trips. And we went to the dump, which
was the best.
It's the best
They have
because
zebras and things, and then piles of trash. It's a beautiful time.
Yeah, the dump here between Austin and San Antonio is also this big nature preserve. So yes, they have all the dump, and they do like all this massive recycling.
Yeah.
So they have these big things,
and they have a little
piles
shop
of glass, and then a little shop where you can shop
goodies.
for goodies that they found when they were collecting the trash. And then they have all these wild animals. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But we went to all kinds of places. We went to farms. We went to grocery stores. We went to all the nature
little museums,
all the nature preserves throughout the hill country.
With the Lady Bird Johnson, they all have a lot of
Center,
and a lot of places similar to that where they have sort of a school groups
like a little school group,
But boy, you show interest a little bit, and people will bend over backwards.
Yeah, they just and they were like, "When are you coming back?" And I mean, it was really nice.
Because a lot of times the kids are very enthusiastic compared to being forced to by a teacher. Yeah. It's more so of this is an adventure.
Right. That's how they.
For me, I love an adventure, so it was great.
It really worked out well. That was a lot of fun. And then I shared with the folks in the previous video that 4th through 8th grade was when we started doing co-ops, and I really. And I gather now homeschool moms may call them pods. We called them co-ops back in the day. I like the way you say the back when times.
The back when times before the Great War.
But it was interesting because a lot of these mothers that were in our little social circle had started forming co-ops, especially with their older children. So when it came time for Benjamin to participate, these things were already in place. So when 4th grade came...
But disorganized.
Yeah, a little disorganized.
And that was about to change.
So it was funny because these moms in this homeschool group that we were in, they said, "Oh, we think we'll kind of transition to this now that some of our kids are getting older. We're going to transition to this homeschool co-op." And so we went to check it out, and it was very nice. I think it was a year or two. I can't remember how many years we stayed with that. I remember they moved, and then they was so far a drive.
It was like 2.
Maybe it was 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah.
But in any event,
good experience.
That was they were in a classroom now, and then mothers
2 days a week.
2 days a week, and then mothers had the responsibility to teach something. And some mothers were actual teachers, and they had been educated in a particular subject. Other mothers just had a particular knowledge based on maybe what they had majored on in
finger
college.
Knitting.
Yeah, finger knitting. I told them about the bandoliers.
Oh, you have to. I mean,
and then other mothers, based on maybe what their work experience was, were able to teach something. Some people could speak a second language, and so they would teach a foreign language. So there were. Oh, yeah, that wasn't for you.
I struggle enough with this one.
But there was a lot of little courses you could pick from. And then what was good was there wasn't a specific structure, which I thought was good in terms of grades. It was really based more on where the child was in their learning. And so I think that you were grouped with a group of kids who would technically be 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. Mm-hmm. And these are small. I mean, I think there were 7 kids in your
7 to 10
in your class co-op.
And there were maybe 3 or 4 of those classes. Maybe 3, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, I think so. I can't remember exactly, but then it was cute because like Benjamin said, I do tend to be very organized and stuff.
To bring order.
And so
out of the chaos.
I said, "This is great. I really like this, and I like how this." I like this concept of co-ops. The kids had companionship during the day.
That socialization is very important, especially for outgoing people.
You were able to have lunch. You know, they all brought a bag lunch, and then they had some playtime. They had some classes in the morning, and then some classes in the afternoon. And your group was still enjoying read alouds, and so that was one of my jobs, was doing the read alouds and then teaching American history.
Oh yeah.
And I had a high schooler who was a homeschool high schooler, and he was adorable because he was like my assistant helper.
Yeah.
You know, and he would go around the room and help kids if they weren't quite sure what page we were on, because some kids would read along with me. You know, I'd be reading aloud, but they would be following along, and that would help their own reading skills as well. I was sort of like the book on tape, you know what I mean? And then that's another thing, too, that a lot of kids said that they found very helpful.
She has excellent diction.
Was to either hear someone reading the book while they followed along in their copy, or when they were at home, they would listen to a book on tape and read along to help strengthen their reading skills. Oh, and that's what I wanted to mention before. A lot of parents told me that they really enjoyed getting books on tape for their kids, because sometimes, and that's an old-fashioned expression, books on tape, but sometimes the kids just didn't have all the time they wanted to sit down and actually read and finish a book. But they could have the book playing while they were washing up for bed.
Auditory learners, it's very easy if that's your specialty.
And they really like that idea. But in any event, it was very cute having the high school boy, because he really enjoyed, you know, and I thought this was interesting, because I think sometimes even depending on your child's learning style, he was like 17 or 18. He was getting close to graduating and going to college. And he really enjoyed when I would read aloud. And he would just sit and listen. And he would say, "Oh, ma'am, I really enjoy this." And
That's really sweet.
I do remember him. So a big blonde kid. I don't know if you may not remember him.
Very vague memory. Glasses and something, maybe. Very
but he was
foggy
a
memory.
very nice young man. And so you never know, you know. Sometimes at 13, 14, they just want to read on their own. But sometimes it's amazing, especially if you're educating multiple grades. You may find that you have kids who are 17, 18 years old, and they really enjoy kind of joining in with the younger kids when you do a read aloud.
Almost a brotherly sort of mentor.
Yeah, and a mentor.
Way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. But so we did that, and then at the same time we did that, we found that in Austin, we had to drive into Austin, but we found out that there was a homeschool science club. And we joined the science club. And this is something I highly recommend.
That was good.
And there's so much more stuff today than there is when you were a kid. And because homeschooling has become, I would say, a lot more mainstream. So they may have these clubs, but this was run by a father who was a scientist. And he ran this club, and the kids would do projects.
And have little buzzers to answer questions.
And what they did was they prepared them to participate in the Science Bowl. And the Science Bowl, now, I don't know if this is unique to Texas. I think maybe every state has this, because I think then the kids can go on to national competitions. But he would have the kids do presentations and talk about science and learn science. And then part of the science club was devoted to training for the Science Bowl. And so you and a couple of other kids qualified to go to the Science Bowl. And it didn't matter, at least, I don't know how this might work in every state, but here in Texas, it didn't matter whether you came from a homeschool or a brick and mortar school. And you all trained for the Science Bowl, and then we went to one of the colleges.
It's a good time, too.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie. Yeah. And they bring enough kids, and I forget exactly how the rules work, but that you can, if you get tired, because it's like an all-day event.
Tap out.
And you can tap out and change out. And then if you know if they're getting ready to do a subject that one kid is especially good at.
Biology,
they tapped you
Let's
in.
go.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of fun. But that was 4th and 5th grade. And then we have a friend friend who's very knowledgeable about astronomy. And so he would come at night, and he had the telescope and show the kids the planets.
It's about building that network.
So it really is. It really is. You have to kind of run it a little like a business and just be always reaching out to people, reaching out to businesses for field trips and farms and things like that, reaching out to friends and neighbors who may be knowledgeable about a particular subject matter and they have a passion for it.
Yeah, people are surprisingly willing to help.
They
and
are
I think
so
that
willing
is
to help.
The biggest takeaway of this is don't wait for anyone else to do it because no one else will. You have to go out and make it happen.
You really do.
You were amazing about that. Always.
You're kind.
No, you taught me too, and work and things like that. You have to go and make it happen because no one else is going to.
That's very true.
But once you do, then you lay the foundation and you're able to even help others. But you got to go and
that's very true.
find and organize and make things happen.
And that's really why I wanted to, even though my focus of my channel is all on traditional foods, when some of you found out that I had been a homeschool mom, that's really why I wanted to do these few videos about this. And, leave any questions and comments that you have, leave them, or questions in the comments below. And Benjamin and I'd be happy, to answer them. I really am happy to help, in any way that I can. And I know Ben is too. But in any event, so 4th and 5th grade, so that was like science team and the co-op. And then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we decided because that one co-op we were in, they moved. Co-ops. And then we decided to form the co-op.
Yeah, we had the person come here.
We held the co-op here. And we had 5 kids, 6th, 7th, and I think you all were in like 6th, and you were in 6th grade.
Mm-hmm. I think we had one 7th grader.
Maybe we had one 7th grader.
Everyone else 6th, if I remember. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. But what we did was we 5 mothers, again, I just put the word out. I started looking and researching it, and I found a woman who had been a high school math and science teacher, and she was retired. And she was looking to be a tutor. And then I said to her, we're a homeschool group. Would you be willing to come once or twice a week? I think it might have started with once a week, and we might have worked up to twice a week. Would you be willing to come and teach middle schoolers math and science? And all of us mothers will chip in and pay you. And she was thrilled. And she loved it. And
tough cookie, but a good teacher.
She was a tough cookie, but she'd bring all the science materials, and we had the microscope, and then she'd do them.
Bunsen burners and things.
She'd bring everything. She was fantastic, and she loved the enthusiasm of the kids. And everybody was on their best behavior, and it really went very well, and that was very good. And that was actually, she came to our home 6th and 7th grade, and then when you were in 8th grade, there was a facility or something. Yeah, I would spread the word around to other homeschool
You'd
groups.
Expanded it to some massive thing.
That we had this math and science teacher, a retired woman, who was teaching the kids, and she was outstanding. Well, she got so much demand for her. And she was just a great techer. She had good control of the kids and also an amazing command of the subject matter. And she and another lady who was a retired English teacher, so it was great. You had the English teacher, and then you had the math and science teacher. And they rented... It was a lot of these homeschool groups tend to rent space from churches that are not busy during the week.
Like a portable or something.
Yeah, like a little portable or something like that. But she and this English teacher rented some space, and then they listed the courses they were going to offer and what times they were going to offer the courses. And one thing I want to say, especially this is something I think I left out about Charlotte Mason, was that the co-op that we started with in 4th and 5th grade, they were total Charlotte Mason. Mm-hmm. And for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the lady who was teaching taught because she was teaching homeschoolers, and it was so much easier for her she never had more than 5 kids at a time.
Yeah. And everyone was well behaved because it was it was like, it wasn't a daily thing. It was a special occasion going, and you had to give it your all just because it was special.
And so she really understood the way that we all believed in teaching, and she really embraced the Charlotte Mason method, and she loved it, as I think a lot of teachers do when they can have a small group and they can really let the kids explore and go down, what do they say, rabbit holes or rabbit trails, and really explore and really make the subject very rich. And so her and this other teacher, they rented the space, a real working knowledge that you don't, and then you don't forget it.
Exactly.
And so for 8th grade, then we went to her little school, and you didn't do English there because that was just, for someone with dyslexia, even though it was a small group, it just wasn't something that was going to work.
Weeping and crying in this valley of tears.
That wasn't going to work. And so but you did the science there. And you were still doing reading therapy, because we always had to squeeze that in first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then we did the science with her and the math with her. And then we were just really doing a lot of read alouds and a lot of
you and me going on adventures.
And we still did field trips.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you remember, but I don't even remember how old you were, but I remember with the homeschool group, because you liked science so much.
I was
Do you remember
crazy about it? Yeah.
The science field trip group?
Yes.
And I would contact these different nature preserves and all these places, and we have some beautiful places in the Hill Country, the Texas Hill Country here between Austin and San
you'd be surprised,
Antonio.
wherever you're at, there are always some places that are
and
set up. There could even be a hole in the wall, like where I go to college. I had to do a project, and there was this little place with one guy. I showed enthusiasm, and he helped me so much.
Yeah,
so it's
and
just
it really is. And there'd be like maybe a little local park ranger or something, and they would have a little museum or whatever, and they'd be so happy. We went to one place.
Because you don't go into those things unless you really like it.
Yeah, and he'd, have maybe 10, 20 kids on the field trip. And actually, we called it our little science field trip group. It was very focused. It had to be something with science, biology, nature. And we went to one place.
A planetarium.
And we went to caves. Yeah. We went to the planetarium.
Oh, yeah, we did go to it.
We went to a lot of caves.
We went to caves,
and then we went to one place, and I don't remember the name of it, but I think it was in either Burnett or Burnett County. But if you all live in the Hill Country, you may know it. But it was a place that had been... they had done some excavation there, and they had found that maybe there was some like native sort of tribes had lived there or something, and they had excavated
arrowheads and things like that. It was a good time. We got to throw spears.
Yeah, they got to throw spears.
And then my favorite will always be Sweetberry Farms.
Oh, that was
it's off
nice.
Somewhere in the hinterlands, but it's a nice time.
Yeah.
You and me going around, and you could go and cut your own basil, and then we came home and we made so much pesto.
I remember that.
And then with the Parmigiano Reggiano. And it was just real, those things are memories that are just real nice, and something that you don't get when you just go to school.
It's very true.
It's those experiences or something that, it comes once and then it's gone, but it's nice.
Yes, speaking of Sweetberry Farm, you always enjoyed that. That's a farm. There's actually two. There's one out here in the Hill Country, and then there's one that's somewhere, I don't know exactly what town it is because I don't know that area as well, but it's east of Austin, Texas. So they have two locations. We primarily go to the one here in the Hill Country. And they grow all this basil, and they grow
it's a magical place.
They grow all kinds of flowers.
Oh yeah,
and it's
$5 you can clip out as much as you can hold.
Self-pick, and self-cut, whatever. And we would cut all those flowers, and the basil was amazing.
Oh, that was so great! And we blended it all up to make pesto, and then we had our crackers.
We had such a good time with that. But that's if you live in this area or you're ever visiting this area, Sweetberry Farm is wonderful.
And I'm sure there's places like that.
Oh, and all over the country.
All over the world.
And they would pick, you could pick strawberries, and they would have fresh strawberry ice cream, and, whatever was in season. They had pumpkins.
The corn maze.
And the corn maze,
it's like you don't see farms much anymore, so it was a unique, neat thing.
It was really nice. And then the one that's east of Austin, is where, and because I don't think they have it in the one here in the Hill Country, but the one east of Austin was where they have the Christmas tree farm.
Oh,
and
that's
remember, we
right,
went.
yeah.
I think we went once.
Once, yeah,
on a
and then we
field
were like,
trip.
okay, that's a lot of Christmas tree cutting. I think we'll just go get it from Home Depot. No, that's coming from me. So.
But that I think we went once, and
Yeah.
but most of the time we go to the one that's out here in the Hill Country, and that was a really special feel. We would go every year.
It's so funny how that place. There'll always be that with everyone, but I don't know why that place always stuck out so much.
And I think
to
that
me.
you find
Good
that
memories.
you find that with your child. There's one
And Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center were sort of the
and
two.
we would go just with school field trips. Sometimes we'd go as a family. We really tried to nurture the areas and the places that Ben liked to go. We would go on a regular basis. So I think that's another nice thing, that you have the flexibility when you're homeschooling. So in 8th grade, when it was winding down, we were thinking about what to do about high school. And I think all through our homeschooling experience, 1st through 8th, our goal was always, because we would, have conversations with Benjamin about this.
I wanted to.
And our goal was to get him to transition to a brick and mortar high school. Now, can you homeschool high school? Definitely. I know so many people who have done it. They've had wonderful success. Their children have gone on to college and then gone on to have excellent careers. So it's not that you can't do it. But Benjamin is an only child, and as you can see, he's very
talker.
He's very sociable, and really was looking forward to that. And even when you were in 7th and 8th grade, I think you had I forget what they call that, shadow visits.
Oh yes.
In middle school. But you came home and you would go for 2 days.
I would have loved it. It would have been. It was hard for me.
Yeah, it was hard. And
you guys homeschool me was very kind because it was really hard for me.
And so that's what
the reading, the math, the writing, the what room. And
and that's what he came home and he said, that was really, it's after 7th grade, he said, I'm not ready. And then we tried it again in 8th grade and he said, no, I'm really not ready. And where we were doing these shadowing things that was not available at our public school, you weren't allowed to do, at least at our local public school, you weren't allowed to do any shadowing like that. And our plan was for him not to go to public school. Today, I think it's very different because I think maybe the public schools have
more
infrastructure for people with learning differences. But our plan was not to send him to public school. It was to find a small school, a small private school
that offered accommodations.
So we knew that there was a small school about 45 minutes from where we lived that offered accommodations, and it was near where you had gone to pre-K and kindergarten. And so that was our plan. But you had to apply. You had to put in an application. And so I had to prepare transcripts. And I had gotten a lot of questions from all of you about what do you do about transcripts? Now, I have to say one thing. We do live in Texas. It's extremely easy to homeschool in Texas because our governor, our legislature, they really respect the parent. And they really give the parent some credit for knowing what's best for their child.
Autonomy.
So there's not a strong oversight to how you want to homeschool your child and for how long. They have very basic guidelines that they give you that you should be covering math, English, civics, it's something like that. But it's no more than a page long. It's not complicated, and they offer a lot of resources if you need help and so on and so forth. But they really do give a lot of autonomy and they put a lot of trust in the parent. But when it came time to go to a private school, a private high school, we did have to put in an application, not complicated, but still an application, and one that had transcripts. So I had to prepare transcripts for his grades 1 through 8th. And all I did was, and luckily by 8th grade, there was a little more help online. The internet was a lot more expanded at this point. And I basically went online and typed in, I think, something along the lines, boilerplate homeschool transcript. And I also had some input from my girlfriends who had already been down this route as well with doing a transcript. And I just printed that out and just started filling that in. And
Benjamin, you got all A's and a B in English.
And I really just tried to be very, fair and honest about it, when I would keep, and I had a lot of notes that I had kept throughout his school years.
Good
about
record keeper.
I was a very good record keeper, and I think that's important. How he was doing in subjects and what, where I would place him if I was actually assigning a grade. And actually, I did have little transcripts, and I don't know if you remember this, but they weren't transcripts, they were report cards.
Oh, from the math and science teacher.
Yeah, I had some from the math and
Always
science
good to
teacher.
see. Excellent work.
Yeah, I had basically report cards from them from whenever we were in a co-op or when we used the retired school teacher. She would give report cards. And also, when you were in first through third grade, some of the curriculum that I had incorporated into our day were Catholic, and so I had some little Catholic programs and they were very Charlotte Mason oriented, and so they were they were little books. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah, the little angel guy,
little angel,
guardian angel friend, sweet things.
And they had little task cards that I had ordered, and the task cards, you got one a week, and he would color it in. It had like a little boy sweeping or something, and then it had where you would check every day, did you sweep the floor?
Yeah.
It was like teaching life skills. But what was very cute was they would include a report card. It was a little cardboard thing, and I think they gave you 4, assuming you'd be giving, one every quarter through the year. And I would fill those out.
Things like that are so nice for kids too.
And you
would,
it's
a tangible thing.
And they were, I know maybe this sounds sexist, today you never know what the right thing to say is, but they had blue report cards for the boys and pink report cards for the girls. So I had the blue ones, and I would just, write the little subjects down. And then
I don't look very good in pink. Salmon.
But I would put little,
F minus.
No, you never got F minus. But I would put, what I thought, was a grade. And it was cute because I think they had a column for effort. I remember this.
Oh, yeah.
Because and something I talk about in the previous video is you never want to make the child feel bad that, if they're really trying hard. But
time where people make them feel bad will come later.
That they have a learning difference and they're struggling, if you see they're really trying hard, you give the A for effort, and maybe they're not at the level yet of completing that grade work. So maybe there's a B or a C or whatever the case may be, but you make sure that the child feels they are getting the A for effort if they're really trying. So you had those little report cards. So basically, I just cobbled together all the information I had kept throughout the 8 years of homeschooling and put them in this more boilerplate format. Also, too, the good thing was the little private school, they were very
Write
open.
an essay, get a recommendation.
Yeah,
too.
and they were open to accepting people who had been homeschooled, and they, I think, guided me as well as to what type of information they were looking for on the transcript. So there are a lot of resources for that, so I don't want you to worry about the transcripts. So now I know a lot of people have asked me, how did Benjamin cope with the transition from being homeschooled to going to a brick and mortar school, a high school? And the one thing, now we did switch schools. We went to one school in 9th grade, but at the end of 9th grade, they got a new principal.
And they did away with all the accommodations.
So then my friends told me that about an hour, it was a long drive, 45 minutes to an hour in another direction. There was a small Catholic school. They didn't know if they offered accommodations, but that I should contact them. And so I contacted them, and they were really nice. They said, we don't have any type of program for accommodations. However, if your son would like to come to this school, and again, you have to apply, but it's not a difficult process.
It's not hard.
And this was,
they want you at the end of the day.
The other school was very much like what you would consider like a private school. This other small Catholic school was more like what people would call a parish school or a diocesan school. And so it really was more that you were applying.
Run by the Dominicans, I think it was.
I can't remember exactly, And they had a few nuns, but mostly lay people. And they were very nice. And when I called them up and spoke to the principal and the guidance counselor, they said, we don't have any kind of program in place, but we're so happy to help you. And we can figure something out. And basically what they did was that the guidance counselor had an assistant. And this assistant would be the one to help Benjamin with whatever accommodations he needed.
Yeah, like just reading exams usually.
Yeah, reading an exam to him or giving him an extra time and letting him work in a quiet place in his office and things like that. And it worked out very well. And the teachers were very, accommodating for the most part.
And as long as like you as the individual are like, nice and say, I apologize for the inconvenience. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, he was always really
You're
good.
You're nice, it goes such a long way.
Yeah, it really does. That's, I think,
it's
a very
crazy.
big thing. But
I know, a basic life skill. But
the first school, so going into 9th grade, Benjamin was very happy and excited and really looking. I thought it
was going to be this glorious Valhalla where we all stood together, joyous, triumph.
High school's a challenge for anybody, I think.
But we make the best of it.
One thing that was so cute was that when we had the first parent-teacher conference, all of his teachers said, "Gosh, we just love Benjamin. He's so enthusiastic." And we said to him...
Oh, I was very popular, as you can imagine.
And no, but that's with the other kids. They don't go for that. But they said, he's so enthusiastic, raising his hand and participating. And it was very cute because they said to him in the beginning, the first couple of days, where did you go to grammar school? Then,
St. Patrick's Catholic Academy.
That was homeschooling. That was and it's funny that... but they would say, gee, he's not jaded. He's very enthusiastic. And then he said to the teachers, I was homeschooled for 8 years. I'm thrilled to be here. But he really enjoyed that sort of brick and mortar setting, and he really embraced the subject matter. But, with anything, I think any transition, and I think you'll really concur, because you had this with your social circle of buddies. No matter where they came from. Some came from private schools, some came from public schools, some came from homeschooling. It didn't matter. The transition, I think, no matter what you come from 8th grade, middle school, to 9th grade, to high school is hard.
It's a kick in the gut.
Yeah, it's hard. So I think that if you do homeschool and you're going to make that transition to high school, no matter what the case may be, unless you have a child who's like the star football quarterback or something, or is incredibly, like Benjamin said, savant, incredibly intelligent, I think high school is the transition is difficult.
But I really do think it builds a lot of character, though, because I will say, in college and also in business, that the struggles that I went through there, and just being different, being dyslexic and stuff, really. I could have been very different without that. And so maybe who I am. Grateful for that.
And did you feel that the help that you got homeschooling in 1st through 8th helped you, even though you had accommodations?
Oh, yes. Context clues, things like that.
Yeah.
Because you can have all the accommodations in the world, but you're also just going to be on your own because that's the way the world is. Mm-hmm. And so, having those, context clues, how do I count on my fingers without moving them? You're so sweet to help me with these things. But, it really is, it's tough. The transition to high school is difficult. College, much better.
Would you say that 9th and 10th were probably more difficult than 11th and 12th?
Oh, yeah. It's that first, I think with everyone, and I could even see that with the people I became friends with. Everyone, no matter where you come from. Those first two are very difficult. When you're underclassmen, as they call it.
Yes.
Upperclassmen, not only is it somewhat, I don't want to say less challenging, but you're more accustomed to the work, so it's not as challenging. Because there is a lot of busy work in brick and mortar schools, when in homeschooling, the process can be very expedited to, do what's important. And, I would have an excellent working knowledge of these things, instead of, fill out bubble box and all this. So that was really good, and that gave me a great foundation for going into high school. And luckily, well, at least when it came to some of the subjects like biology and history, I had a very good knowledge. That was
you did.
Probably,
You had a lot of interest in those two subjects.
I knew some about it. So, it wasn't going to, wipe me out. Now, English, on the other hand, I had to spend hours working on, because that was very difficult for me.
Did you find, when you got to the second high school, did you find that the accommodations, even though it wasn't structured,
even though it was less organized, it was better, just because the person, and I think it really comes down to that, building your network in the individual, the person
that helped
he cared.
Yeah, yeah, he did. He really
cared.
did. He really did.
And you'll encounter that, especially, I think everyone in high school to a certain extent can feel like an outcast, no matter how many people you have around. But if a teacher really, a lot of teachers, they like teaching. And if they see that you're a person that, you might struggle, you might not even like the thing, but if you just show a little kindness and just a little bit of a willingness to take their advice, teachers will really go, a long way for you. The majority of people, you come with a good attitude. That's the biggest thing. And, I think my father had said something to me very, very, important when I was young, is that I'm probably going to have to work twice as hard as other people. And I always want to put my best foot forward, because, and it's humbling, but I want people to give me breaks. And I think everyone could use that in your life. And I think, now I do flashier things and, all these things, but the humbling aspect that it teaches a man, woman, anyone, that life is tough, and it is a cyclical process where, you get to the top and then you're back on the bottom.
Yeah, that's very true.
If you're humble about it, you're able to make it.
Now, you graduated from high school with good grades, and we did have to make one adjustment, which your high school was very helpful with, and with sign language. And this is something I wanted to share with all of you in case you encounter this. Benjamin's high school required, in order to get
a college-ready diploma.
A college-ready diploma was something like it's a terminology they use here in Texas, that if he wanted that type of diploma that he could use then to apply to college, he would need to have 3 years of a foreign language. Now, in 9th grade at the first school,
oh my God,
they saw it was very difficult, and they said, "Well,
took Latin."
They said, "Let's try Latin." So I had said to them, and it was cute because after you, they said, we have a new policy on making children with learning differences take language.
That is the amazing thing, is wherever I went, there was always a new policy. And it's amazing. I can be, of course, very nice, but also it's sometimes a slightly obstinate. We don't talk about that. And your efficiency. And I'd say okay, guys, let's do it, that I would have, and then how efficient you are. It scares people. But, it was effective. And then in the end, they say, wow, they're really awesome.
Yeah, I think that, I think everybody, like Benjamin
they come around to it. And in Texas, too, it's the culture.
In Texas, the culture, people are so nice here. But as I said to Ben, we always, a lot of times when I tell them before we go in, honey, we got to go with our hat in our hand. We got to be real humble. We really need help. And I think that people were very kind to us because of that, because they saw, sometimes we were a little desperate.
Yeah, ask for help, and some people will say no.
Yeah,
but
some
a lot
people
of people
say no,
yes.
but a lot of people said yes. But it was interesting because when
those
they
that
said,
aren't super dogmatic about the
people
rule,
who are a little flexible,
the letter of the law. But most people are
pretty flexible. But it was funny because they said he's got to take a foreign language. So I said, this is really going to be tough. I said, he can barely read and write English.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how this is going to work out. And they were like, well, let's try Latin.
Let's put him in Spanish.
Oh,
that was the next time. But Latin first. Sorry.
Let's try Latin. And God bless.
I got a 3 in the class.
Oh, I didn't want to say.
I got a 3.
Out of 100.
Out of 100.
And so
I know no Latin.
So
E tu brute tempus fugium mementos more, and that's it.
And so they called us in for a meeting, and they had the man who, at the time, the school still had the person who ran accommodations, and then they had the assistant principal
I was dying inside.
and the Latin teacher. And they were just saying, oh, no, it wasn't the Latin teacher. It was head of the language department.
Oh, my God.
She was a tough cookie. And very nice, but, she was a tough cookie. And she said,
cookie.
well, we've tried everything. And she just was like, and I didn't know what they were going to say.
I know.
They were like, well, we've tried everything, and this really is not working. So I don't know what we're going to do. But let's not. And then I think it was sort of towards the end of the year, and they were very nice. They expunged that from your record.
Thank goodness.
And then they said,
We have new policy.
We'll have a new policy that we're not going to require people with learning differences to take foreign language, but you in some way are going to be responsible for this. I didn't quite know what that meant, but they said, we'll worry about it next year. Then the end of the 9th grade, the new principal gave the meeting that he was
We're purging all the dyslexics.
we're not going to have
I probably scared them.
We're not going to have any children at this school who need accommodations. And so it was very heartbreaking. And then just scrambled over the summer, and then the small Catholic diocesan school said they would help us. So he started school there, and they said, let him try Spanish. They were good-natured.
Parlez-vous français?
And
Oh, no,
that's French.
That's French.
But this is what
Azul.
it was. That's right, you learned blue.
That's all
His
I
favorite
got.
color.
Rojo, something Rajo.
But it was so funny because there were 2 areas that in his English class, he had a Catholic nun teaching
my
the
God.
class, and she made them.
She came around to like me.
But she really liked
But
it.
nuns
yeah.
are terrifying.
But it was very cute because she said, we're going to have the kids keep a journal. And they had to write about whatever books they were reading, something like this.
in the class.
And so I said to her, he has dysgraphia, and it's going to be real hard for him, and you may not be able to read it. And can he do like a voice to text and just cut and paste it and put it in the book? And she said, oh, no.
The letter of the law.
He can learn how to write. And I know this from going to Catholic school as a kid. I was in public school in my very early grades, and then my parents put me in a little convent school that was on the grounds of a convent run by nuns. And when they saw my handwriting, they were like, oh my gosh, this won't do. And the nun would stay after school and teach me how to write. To this day, I have lovely handwriting. Thank you, Sister Genevieve. but in any event, she said, oh no, he'd get the hang of it, and I can read it. And then we had the parent-teacher meeting,
great.
and she was so cute because she said, I think you mentioned something about voice to text. I think that's a good idea.
I think my kindergarten teacher put it best. The boy writes like chicken scratch.
That wasn't very nice.
That was not very nice.
That wasn't very nice.
Yeah,
but
I'll say this, my handwriting's not exactly.
Yeah,
the spelling, I never really got spelling.
It was hard. And they told me with dyslexia it would be hard. But it was cute when she's like, yeah, he can do voice.
If it's not spelled phonetically, it's not spelled right.
He can cut it out and just put it in his journal, and that'll be fine.
And I had the whole glue by the end of the year, this glue mess, tape and stapling, going overboard.
That was funny.
Yeah.
But but what I found was that they said, so Spanish, it was a week, I think, and the Spanish teacher was great.
He really just spoke Spanish.
Yeah, and
I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, and he said he realized that Benjamin wasn't going to be able to do this, and so the guidance counselor.
The Spanish book was not in English.
Yeah, it was all Spanish, and the kids were like doing really well and speaking Spanish.
I'm just sitting there thinking, oh boy,
like, I'm in trouble.
Parlez-vous français? No speaker de French.
and he's like, it's Spanish,
yeah.
But it's funny. But in any event, the guidance counselor said, you're going to need to, and she had a lot of experience with this, and from other schools where she had worked, and she said, you're going to need to get him sign language classes, and we will give him credit for that, but we don't offer it. And and you'll have to make arrangements for that, and then just wherever he goes to school for the sign language, just bring us the transcript, and we'll incorporate that into his transcript, and he'll get his college level diploma from high school, one that he can use to apply to college. So I didn't know what to do. So I called our local high school in the school district where we live. And they said, no, they said, we understand, you pay the school tax and all, but he can't, you have to be 100% enrolled fully in the high school in order to be able to.
They want the cheddar cheese.
Well, they got it with
Yeah,
the school
that's true.
tax, but they, they have policies, and you can understand that, it's like it's for safety reasons and whatnot, but, they can't just have someone come just for
Those dyslexics.
one class.
Yeah.
And but what surprised me was I talked to the office and they explained this to me, and they said, but why don't you talk to the head of the language department, because we do sign language, Spanish, French, Chinese. I mean, they, like, the local public high school had a lot of classes, language classes. But why don't you talk to the head of the language department here at our high school and ask her what she might recommend? So I called the head of the language department, very nice, and she said, let you talk to the sign language teacher and see what you might be able to work out separate from the school. So I talked to the sign language teacher and I explained the situation, and she and I worked out a plan where after school, it was a couple of days a week, I don't really remember the
the
plan.
library.
Yeah, but at our little community library, they could work together after school, and I would pick him up from school and then bring him to down here to our little community library, and she would come after her school day ended. And she taught him one-on-one. I had to pay her because this is private, basically a private lesson. And that's why I joke, you've always heard me say this, that's why I wore the same clothes every day. But it was a private lesson, and she taught him sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. 3 years.
Were there two different ladies? There was the one lady and then the other one.
My gosh, yes, I forgot.
Yeah, God bless Death.
You have a better memory.
And
the first lady.
very nice woman, but it was hard.
That was really hard.
The other lady was a speaker.
And the first lady, what I did was I called. That's right. It wasn't the high school in our school district. It was the one near where your school was.
Right.
So it would be closer for me to dash there and get there, because the school where he went was far from where we lived. But God bless her, she was deaf, and she had some kind of job. I don't think she was a school teacher or anything. But the school was willing to accept that. The high school that you went to was willing to accept that. And again, we met at the public library.
She takes it with me.
Yeah. So
God bless.
But the lady said to me, and she was doing sign language. I didn't know any sign language at the time, but she could also speak. And she said to me, I'm happy to teach him sign language, but I'm not comfortable with him not having anybody with whom he can practice. And so I said,
You're a saint.
Well, now, my mother-in-law knows sign language. She was a special ed teacher. But I didn't know sign language, and Benjamin wouldn't necessarily see his grandmother every day. And so I said to this woman, can I take the class too? And we'll pay you for a class for 2 people. So she was thrilled. So we would meet her at the local, that was a public library, because that was close to Austin. And she taught us both. So I have 1 year of sign language. But we took that together. But then she got married. I think she got married and was moving.
Moved away.
And then we didn't have her. So we're like, now what? And that's when I called
the one here.
The one here.
Most chill woman you've ever met.
So relaxed.
Just your older hippie.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so relaxed, laid back. Oh, come on, Ben. Let's do the sign language.
Yeah, she was very
great.
She was so great with him. And then what was really good was she covered everything. She not the first, because he already had the first year of sign
We
language.
went to the deaf church.
We went to the deaf church.
That was a good time.
We went to
good adventures we had.
We had a lot of adventures. We went to different things that.
We saw a whole documentary that had zero sound and was all
subtitled.
in sign language.
It was subtitles.
Oh,
remember?
yeah, and then it was subtitled, and not even any music.
And they
playing
turned
in
the
background.
sound down because there's no reason to have the sound. It was very difficult to really follow along.
Yeah.
That was, oh my gosh. But she was such a nice lady, and she really did the program just like they would in a high school, because she taught him, second year sign language. She tested him first to see where he was, had he successfully learned what would be taught in the first year sign language class, and he was good for that. And then she taught him second year and third year sign language. Plus, she taught all interesting things about what they call deaf culture. And we had learned that a little bit about that from the first teacher. And so that worked very well.
And the history of sign language and things like that, which it's so nice when you find someone who's willing to accommodate. I'm never going to be very good at a foreign language.
Yeah.
And I don't have any real reason in work and in life to really go after one.
Yes.
So finding someone who was willing to compromise a little bit, teach me history, things like that, on top of what was needed, was really good.
Yeah,
you got to find the right people.
She was an excellent teacher, and because she was a public school teacher, she knew right away how to do the transcript and how to communicate all of this information to his school, so that where he was actually going to high school,
get accepted,
so that they were very comfortable with rolling that in to his high school transcript. So that we were really lucky. That worked out really well. So there are little bumps depending on, if you are, I know this is specific. I wanted to share that because a lot of you talk to me about children that you have in your family who have learning differences and that you're homeschooling. So there can be some little bumps here and there in the road.
It's a very personalized process.
With the accommodations and maybe with foreign language, depending on how they do or not do well with it. So I just wanted to share that. But then the time came and he graduated from high school. And then how did you find the transition from high school with having a learning difference, but you made it through, and then you went and to make the transition to go to college?
Oh, it was great. Overall, it was wonderful. College is a very different battlefield. Mm-hmm. It's a little different, I would say, than it was maybe, 10, 15 years ago. There isn't as much autonomy as there was back then. It is freshman year is kind of like high school repeat.
Freshman year in college.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the accommodations are a lot more set in stone. They have their own facility, those kind of things, depending on where you go. But most places at least have a learning center or, what they'll call, depending on where you're at, a SALT program or these different kinds of things. So that's good. You get to know the people there. But you do have to consider this. You don't want to be the problem, difficult student to the teachers. So sometimes going without can be the best move, and teachers can be understanding when they know what you're dealing with. But for big things, you get it sent down to the accommodation center. You go, you take it, and it really is something that you have to. This journey. It's a very personalized one. I think that's with everyone, but especially people with learning differences and learning disabilities, that it's very personalized. And you really have to, as an individual as well, say, okay, where am I going to fight my battles? Okay, a teacher doesn't want to give me extra time for this. All right, I'm not going to press it.
Every professor is different.
Every professor is different. Now, it's amazing too. It seems that I always caught the more difficult part of the societal evolution, but today it's much easier than it was. You go and these systems are already in place. A lot of the homeschooling things, that infrastructure exists.
Yes, you raise an interesting point.
It's easier to integrate into. You don't have to always build it, though you might but you don't always have to.
If you homeschool through high school and you want your child to go to college,
Resources are
at
there.
least here in Texas, we found that we met a lot of people who had homeschooled through high school, and that the colleges were very open to accepting transcripts and accepting kids who had been homeschooled.
Yeah, overall,
So-
homeschooled kids have a good reputation
Yeah,
with
they
colleges.
do have a good reputation.
At least here.
They do have a good reputation. Yeah, so I think college it's an interesting experience. I think very similar with high school. You have to be a very good self-advocator.
That is
And
the
then-
biggest thing.
and then college.
you get the right devices that you need so that you have the tools you need. You know, Macs and Apple has a lot of great built-in software, and you can really be set without a lot of setup or complicated programs.
Yeah, and I think that if you have a child who learns to self-advocate,
You have to
even if
self-advocate.
you're homeschooled, that when you do get to college, you're more comfortable with it. You're less nervous to say to your professor.
It's
you know,
almost
and-
like teaching a kid sales, because you
Yeah.
almost have to sell yourself
Yeah.
to the professor and say, hey, I really need this, and I would really appreciate your help on
Yeah.
this.
Now, you mentioned the Mac and the Apple.
Yes.
What are some of the technological tools that you found helped you with the different learning differences that you had?
Fundamentally, biggest things, text to speech. You know, on your phone, you can hit the little button, you know, hello, my friends, hello, sweet friends, and it's there. Without that, I'd barely be able to communicate over text. It would be rather incoherent, because even though I can read well enough, I still really do struggle with the spelling, just never really clicked with me. On the other hand, with the Apple computers, I don't know in regards to PC, but I imagine they might exist. Probably not as integrated, but I'm sure that you could if you needed to. You know, you hit function twice, you're able to do, if you enable it, you're able to do speaking. Command 7, you're able to have the text read to you that you have highlighted. And you know, that, a little accommodations, help from tutors here and there is critical. Advocating for oneself is more important than anything. Having that open line of communication so your professor knows who you are. All your teachers should know who you are. And, you know, sit in the front or one back from the front. And it's important. You know, otherwise you can fall through the cracks very easily, because you do need that extra attention. And the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and the quiet wheel doesn't get it.
Well, honey, this was so nice of you to share with us your experiences of eating traditional foods growing up and being a good egg about all the experimentation. And I like the way you talk about the cod liver oil shot followed by the grapefruit
And I'm a kid.
juice. Yeah.
Benjamin, here's your chaser.
And it's funny because we don't drink, you know, but it was really funny that I didn't know how to even explain
Cod
this.
liver oil is disgusting
Yes.
when outside of capsules, but it's very good for you.
Yeah, and then I'd be like, okay, honey, here's a grapefruit chaser. But anyways, we had fun with that. But I want to thank you so much
Thank
for
you for having
sharing
me, the
all of
celebrity
this.
over
Oh,
here.
no, hardly. But I so appreciate you sharing this with sharing your experiences with
Thanks
everyone.
for having me, Mom.
And,
you really are the
oh,
best.
thank
You're a
you.
saint, and you've always put me first, and I really appreciate that.
You're very kind. And in closing, do you have some words that you would like to share maybe with some of the moms and dads out there, some of the parents or aunts, uncles, whomever, grandparents who may be just on the very beginning of their journey to homeschool their children or their grandchildren or their nieces and nephews? What are some of the things that you might tell them starting out? What's a good sort of mindset to have? Ours was, and I think I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no,
but
of course.
I know. Dad and I would always say, be prepared that every year will be different.
Yes. I think just recognizing that there are going to be difficult years, and that there are going to be phases for a person. I mean, I would say freshman year of high school for me that are very difficult and taxing on the person. And making sure to be there as a support system. You guys were always there for me, because that external world can be kind of tough, whether it's just the transition or just being different or just going through the motions of growing up. That would be the biggest thing, without a doubt, is that, and then teaching your ward, your child, your grandchild, advocate for yourself. It's okay to ask for help, and you just have to. You're going to have to work twice as hard, and you're going to want people to give you breaks. But in the end, you'll make it through.
Oh, thank you, honey, for
You're
sharing
the
that.
best. You're a saint, Mother. Putting up with all my shenanigans.
I love you. You're the best.
You're the best.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And now, if you want to hear the original story of all of how we came to homeschooling and all the different things that we did through our homeschooling years, be sure to click on this video over here, and that'll fill you in. And we'll see you over there in our Texas Hill Country kitchen.
Bye, sweet friends.
Bye, sweet kids. Love and God bless.